how you sort of balance the making the money part with the exclusivity and uniqueness of your brand.
It was really getting very, very clear on who your customer is and building out your customer profile, not just like.
Today we are here with Denise Lee from Alala. Denise is one of the top 0.5% Shopify brand owners in the ecosystem.
The brand is not a thing that's like written down once and it's set in stone. Brand is a living, breathing thing. Just like we are living, breathing people, we change.
I totally agree with you. And the ingredients of building a successful brand, it's not just.
What was the major challenge that you were facing in the beginning of your journey, and how did you manage to solve it?
There are two things. One is standing out from the crowd. So I think you kind of also have to.
For the people watching here, Denise, what is that you won't find this in a book moment for you?
For anybody who's like starting a clothing company or any kind of product company listening to this, there's.
Welcome back. And today we are here with Denise Lee from Alala. Denise is one of the top 0.5% Shopify brand owners in the ecosystem, an incredible human. And I'm actually very excited for this episode, especially for those of you who are in the apparel scene, because Denise is about to drop some real wisdom, not only on apparel itself, but in e-commerce as a whole. So Denise, welcome aboard.
Hi guys, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I can't believe we got Denise. She's a gem in this business, and she's doing things that have just never been done before. She goes up against the Lululemons of the world and she crushes. And she's an amazing example for anyone that wants to be an entrepreneur, wants to be a boss lady like her. And she has a lot of employees, just a very different business model than I have. I have none. She has many. So it'd be interesting if we could talk about that today. The way she speaks about her team is like their family. And I believe she's had a lot of people working for her, the same people for a while. And so I want to understand that, because my understanding is keep the overhead as low as possible. And, when things go up and down, if you don't have employees that you need to pay for all the time that are on a salary, I don't mean when you're working with freelancers and you're working on, I have many people that work for me on freelance basis, or even a commission basis. But if things go bad, then I can quickly adjust. How do you handle that? How many employees do you have? Can you give us a big, like a sort of a 50,000 foot view of your business today for people that don't know your company and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm the founder and CEO of Alala. We are a luxury women's activewear line, athleisure line. We've been in business for 10 years. And, I started the business kind of as the athleisure trend and craze was kind of taking off. And we've been able to very fortunately ride that interest and that trend kind of up over the last 10 years. And we're based here in New York City. I have an all-female team, which is really incredible and amazing. Very proud of that. It's not always been an all-female team, but currently it is. And, we love having women work on women's clothing, right? It just makes sense to us. We have kind of like gone through, I think, bigger teams, smaller teams, bigger teams, smaller teams, and been able to kind of flex in terms of what, we need in our business. And so, Dan, I think when we probably last talked, the team was probably bigger than it is now. But we are kind of like 10 people-ish right now. So not huge, but I think for the amount of business we do, it's a very efficient team. And, I kind of like having it that way. And like you mentioned, the people that I do have really are like long time employees. And so, I think the average of who we have now is probably 6 to 7 years with us. And so I think in that way, there's a lot of cohesion and like mind meld in our team, which is really nice. And it helps also because we are all remote now after COVID. And so with, having these long time employees, it really helps us to kind of get into a really great flow, even though we don't see each other all the time. And so I think that's one of the biggest benefits, I think, of having this amazing team of women working together.
Amazing. Denise, I want to dive in very deeply into your team and how you think about that. Before we start, I want to kind of reel it back to the start and ask you why activewear?
It was born out of a personal desire and, need for me. I think if you look back to 2011, 2012, the activewear space was totally different than it is now.
Mm,
There were your big brands, and that was it. And there was nothing else in the market except, the brands that we all know. And I was starting to train for a triathlon at the time. And I had also been in the fashion space for like 10 years at that point and, love fashion, love the transformative nature of it. And while I was going to look for, some new activewear, some new gear to wear for this triathlon training, I realized that there wasn't really anything in the market that really reflected, this more fashionable sense of style, this idea of women who are on the go, right? Like, again, keep in mind, this was 10 years ago, which is super different than it is now. And so I recognized a white space in the market for something that was more fashion forward, more interesting, more relevant to, I think, the modern women than we had at the time. And so my family background is in clothing manufacturing. And so, for me, it was natural to kind of go into the space knowing that was my background. And I also had a lot of fashion experience at that point. And I just decided to go for it.
that's incredible. So you mentioned that there was this gap in the market where you only had these big companies that were there and there was nothing really in between, right? So could you define to me like what was that actual visceral opportunity you saw? Was it that these were overpriced, these big brands, or was it that they were compromising on the materials? Where was the compromise in the market that you saw that this is what I need to fix?
Yeah, I think it was with the big brands, they were very functional at that point, right? It was like, okay, you wear this just to go exercise and then you take it off and then you go put on your other clothes. And I just think that just understanding myself and my friends and kind of the woman that I was, 29, 30 years old at that point, just knowing like what we would want for our lives really didn't match up with kind of what the offering was at the time. And it's just very funny because I always say there's so much luck in launching a brand and being successful. I truly believe that there is that element to it, that I think there was a whole sea change of like mindset and mentality around clothing that started to happen. It's not like we kicked off a trend and then it became a thing. We were part of something that was already like bubbling up at the time. And I think it was like the mix of, function and style that women started to really, really want.
Okay, so style mixed with function was like the gap
Yeah.
basically that you
Yeah.
saw. Brilliant. And one thing you mentioned earlier, you mentioned how it was your family business was all in clothing, right? And I always say that where someone starts their career before they hit on entrepreneurship tells a lot about the success that they have, later on. So where did you kind of start your journey in your background? So was there a career path that you were in? Were you working with your parents in the fashion? What did you do before you found Alala?
Yeah.
Is
So
people like entrepreneurs have it in their blood? So, do you have
it's
someone in your
true.
family, like a grandmother or someone that was an entrepreneur?
Yeah. All of them. My mom, my
Oh, well.
dad, my grandfather, like they were all entrepreneurs. I think, growing up, it was always encouraged myself, my siblings to take that path if we wanted to, right? And I think for me, it was always just like, okay, I've always kept it in the back of my mind. I want to get real world, experience working for other people. But what's my idea? What's the idea I can really like believe in enough to start building a business on? And so I always had that in the back of my mind. But prior to Alala, I worked at traditional fashion houses. I was at Armani. I worked at, and then I worked for an amazing, brilliant entrepreneur who was in the retail space as well. And so between those two experiences, I feel like I also went to business school. And so I think all those things, including my family background, really kind of set me up for creating something in the fashion space, apparel space myself. Um, and I think there were all conscious steps following my passion, following my interests to get to this point. And, I think all the experience that I had from the different places that I worked before really helped me launch Alala and, kind of get it off the ground as quickly as I did.
Incredible, incredible. So you've had a long line of entrepreneurs in your family, so that was the inspiration, and then you also worked for a great entrepreneur and you had experience in fashion. So basically, everything just led you up into that moment of you being able to then have the best possible launch pad that you could into the fashion world.
Yeah, and I think, that's something to kind of highlight because I did have a lot of support and I did have mentors who had experience in the space that I wanted to go into.
I wanted to ask you about mentors. That's really key. So I think you have to have a mentor to, I think, be successful in this world. I don't think it's not like it was 100 years ago where you could figure it out as you go. If you really need to have guidance because things move so quickly and there's so much new tech in every business. Who was your mentor and how did you find them? How did you convince them to be your mentor, or was it more of an organic mentorship?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the two biggest influences is now and even when I started were my dad and Chris, who was my old boss, right? So my dad, he had all the manufacturing experience. He used to own factories, and so anything to do with like producing a garment, like I could go to him and be like, "What am I doing?" And then my old boss, Chris, who I worked for right before I started Alala, like in the 3 years I worked for him, he launched, 6, 7 brands. And so between watching him launch the brands and being part of his team launching brands, and then also having access to him as I was doing Alala on my own, just asking all the questions. And when I worked for Chris, I asked him so many questions. Like we would spend a lot of time, traveling together and things like that. And so I think I really took that opportunity to absorb everything I could from him, but then also ask like some, silly question like, why do you think this way? Why do you do things this way when everybody's doing things that way? And it was such a great opportunity to kind of like pick the brain and be next to somebody who's so successful at what they do, and just understand their perspective on how they approach the business. And I think those two men in my life really helped give me the confidence and the foundation to launch Alala. And I think along the way as well, when I worked for Chris, like I said, he's in this business that I'm in, right? And so all the people on our team, like I was friends with them. So when I started Alala, I could pick up the phone and call somebody and say like, how do I ship things from China? Like like how do I do this? Or where are you going to buy like zippers and buttons, or, like really tactical, detailed questions. And I think because I was a really nice person and they liked me, they were so willing to, take some time to point me in the right direction, share their experiences with me.
Denise is so modest, but like, let's be real. For those that are listening, Denise is in the most challenging part of the business. So there's two businesses that are really challenging, meaning they have the highest rate of failure. The number one is restaurants in the food industry, and it's been even harder for them recently, right? And number two is apparel, but then inside apparel, there's levels. And what Denise is doing is so complicated because I want you to think about, you might be thinking, oh, t-shirt, or you might be thinking shorts. My 10-year-old daughter can make a t-shirt, okay? She could sew it up. What Denise is doing cannot be made by most experts. It's the tech, the specs, every single garment that she creates is like a whole new garment that's never been created before. And then she has to, on top of all the fitted aspects of the specking of the garment, meaning like the actual measurements and then sizing it up for each size or sizing it down, depending on how you do it. On top of that, the materials then change those specs. So if she goes with a spandex or something that has elasticity to it, it changes the entire formula.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, I think they maybe they go on those sites and they're like, oh, put your logo and we'll send you your t-shirt with your logo on. That's the most basic way to
Mhm.
do apparel. What Denise is doing is the most complicated way to do apparel. I owned a dress company. Her business is even more complicated than my business was. I had a few areas around the chest or the shoulders or the waist. She has every single centimeter to worry about, because when you're working out, then you want to go and meet your friends for brunch. You better look good and feel good while you're on the treadmill, but then, or when you're in your Pilates class, but then you better, feel like you're not going to run home and have to change, right? So that's what I love about Alala. It's the kind of stuff that you could see on a runway, but then you can also see on the street, and it makes total sense. It's very practical. This is such a high level of difficulty that Denise is dealing with on a day-to-day basis. Just letting you guys know.
Thanks, Dan. I feel like that definitely, I appreciate your insight because it is true. I think when I, speak to younger entrepreneurs, I speak to people who want to start clothing lines, I don't think they realize how much investment of time, money, mind space, that you have to do to create a product that really resonates with your customer and that you're proud to stand behind. So it is quite a complex process, even though it's something that's been done for hundreds of years. And I think especially for activewear, where it needs to perform as well as look good, there is like that additional element of, detail that you need to put into it.
Yeah, and we'll put up some maybe examples from you, post production of the tech process and just how specific it is when you have to sit there and go through size 0 through 24 or whatever it is, and how complicated that is. I just don't want people to think that anyone can do what Denise is doing. It's really, really difficult. But what you can learn from Denise is how to take the probably the most challenging, complicated part of the apparel business and be a success at it, and then apply what she's going to teach you today to whatever you want to do.
That's brilliant. Denise, would you say it's fashion technology in a way, what you do?
100%. I think there's fabric technology, especially in performance fabrics. There's new things coming out every day. This one has copper, this one has silver, this one has, bands that are woven into it to help with you can wear them and you're exercising while you're just wearing them. There's a lot of technology within performance fabrics that, is kind of like this. And I think obviously the big brands have a stronger hold of that market, right? Because they have the money to invest in R&D. They have the money to kind of create their own fabrics. So I think for the more independent, smaller brands like us, you kind of also have to be as nimble as you can, with discovering new things, kind of proving them out. Like, is this the right thing for my customer or not? Is it just like, marketing, or is it true? Is there a true benefit to it? And then kind of work that into both the product and also your messaging. And so I think that's definitely technological in a way. And I think, apparel designers, especially activewear designers, probably love that aspect of like the technical stuff. But also, the fashion industry, like I said, has been around for hundreds of years. And every day there are new tools coming out to kind of help us manage our process better. And so I think you do have to have like that systems and process mind as well as your creative mind, because there are so many parts to the production process that you have to manage, right? Like every single button, zipper, label has to be managed, tracked, inputted, like I don't know if people know this, but a size small garment might have a different length of zipper than a size medium, than a size large and an extra large. So you're not ordering one zipper, you're ordering four zippers, So I think it's
And you also
complex.
need to manage the forecast of
Yeah,
how
it's
many of those will be
complex. And
ordered.
I feel like, I think people think of fashion sometimes like, oh, it's creative. I get to create and design and pick fabrics and colors. Yeah, you do, but you also have to manage your production, or else you won't have a business.
But is there something like really, really cool about the fact that you've been around for, uh, it would seem like decades, even though it's been a decade for your brand. That's just so unusual. Most brands fail by year 3, year 5. It's a miracle if you're still in business. You've surpassed year 10, but you're still, there's an exclusivity to your brand that, like, if I see Alala, I know it's special. Meaning, there's a lot of other competitors in your space where it's like everyone's wearing the same short or everyone's wearing the same shirt. Is that something that you do on purpose? Do you limit your SKUs because you want exclusivity? You don't want some. I remember when I owned a dress company, if one girl walked into a charity event and she saw someone else wearing the same dress, she'd be mortified. And I was like, you'll never have that problem with me because I don't make that many. So it's really special. Because we were an expensive luxury brand. My brand was called Castle Star, and it was, I started it maybe 18, 19 years ago, and had to shut it in 2010 when the economy tanked, because 90% of my business was specialty stores, and they all went out of business in 2010.
Yeah.
That was the time they disappeared. So, and that's ironically the time that business transitioned to e-com, right? So it's just amazing when a door closes, how an even better door opens. So
Yeah.
tell everyone about how you sort of balance the making the money part with the exclusivity and uniqueness of your brand, which you've done, I think, better than probably anyone in your space.
Thanks, Dan. I think the exclusivity and the uniqueness of the brand really kind of stem from the branding part of Alala. You know, what you see on the website, what our models look like, how the clothes are designed. I think we take a very sophisticated, elevated take on the activewear space. And that appeals to a certain kind of customer, right? And so I think in that way, Alala is pretty clear on like who we are for and who we are not for. And so I think in a way, like it's a self-selected exclusivity. And we always say like we're for everyone, but not for anyone, you know? And so I think people self-select into the Alala brand and to choose to wear this brand. And I think as you were talking, one of the things that I actually feel like is one of my proudest things with the brand, and there are so many good moments and bad moments, but when I see a woman walking down the street in New York City wearing an Alala legging from like 10 seasons ago, like 5 years ago, and she's still wearing it today, that to me is the proof that we're doing something right in this very crowded market. You know, I feel like there are brands out there, you wear it a couple of times, it falls apart, you throw it away, you buy something else. But Alala, I think we always say we stand behind our quality. We want you to wear it season after season, year after year. And so when I do see girls, I'm like, oh my God, that's from like spring 2015. You know, and they're still wearing it today. Like that to me is the essence of Alala. Like it's classic, it's beautiful, it's amazing quality that you can still wear a pair of leggings 5 years later. Like that to me is incredible. And so for me, that's why we do what we do. Fashion can be a very fast-paced and also kind of wasteful business. And so I think our take on that really is to create things that you don't have to throw out after 3 washes.
So like this is something that I talk about a lot, but this is a kerosene iron, and it was invented in 1936. It's patented. It says the patent number here, and December 22nd, 1936. It's as heavy as it looks. So it's stainless steel, and it has a natural wood handle. Sound familiar? I mean, this is the business model that I replicated for Castleflex. I wanted pre-1950s materials in my devices because they last so long. This actually came with the kerosene oil canister as well, and you can still use it to this day. And you can't say that about a lot of the equivalent of fast fashion in the electronics or appliance space because they break so often. The way you know is when I wanted to buy my first vacuum, and it was like a big investment for me. I went to the vacuum repair shop and I asked the guy which brands. This is in New York City on 3rd Avenue. I said, which brands are you working with the most? And when he gave me the names. I wrote them down and said, great, never going to buy those
Yeah.
brands.
Yeah.
He's
Exactly.
like, if you buy these brands, you'll be my best customer. And so what I love about Alala is, first of all, we use Alala in our shoots. We've already done one shoot with Alala. We don't do fancy shoots all the time. We really, we don't have the money for that. We're only a 2.5 year young company. But when I tell the group that is involved in the shoot, whether I take 10 customers and I say, we're going to do a shoot and I'll give everybody, free swag. And I tell them Alala is going to be dressing them. It's like they won the lottery. So it's just a great feeling for me to be able to say, oh yeah, let me just call Denise and Alala will hook us all up. It's
Yeah.
just something that I'm proud of your brand, and I'm proud to associate with your brand. We're the most expensive brand in our space in fitness. There's
Hmm.
no one more expensive than us. And we can't associate with brands that are not good quality or
Hmm.
that our customers wouldn't want to buy.
Yeah.
So it's hard for me to find brands in other categories, in your case, fitness apparel, that I would say, I know we can use those samples. And if we have another shoot in 3 years, we can, use the same models with the same clothing and they'll still be wearing it. And
Yeah.
that's what we're seeing. And that's why I'm so grateful that you're always willing to participate. And I just wanted to let you know, I haven't told this to you yet, but you've always been so good to me, and you've always helped me and mentored me. And I just wanted to let you know that I'm going to gift all of your employees Castle Flex
Oh,
next
thanks, Dan.
as a thank you to you.
That's so nice. Thank
Mhm.
you. And I
And I
think
don't
you
ever.
bring up a couple really interesting points. One is, in this day and age of like, disposability, there is a group of people that do still value quality, and I think are willing to pay a little bit more for quality products that they can like use for a long time. And I think uh for anybody who's like starting a clothing company or any kind of product company listening to this, I think there's always that decision of like price, quality, cost. Where do I sit? And if you do think that you have a more higher price customer, it does behoove you to deliver them a great quality product, because then you have a customer for life. And
And
so,
by the way, do you like? I'm not gonna get you in trouble, but do you look at your orders and be like, "Ooh, cannot believe that celebrity just bought a Lala"? Like, do you ever
yeah.
do that?
Yeah,
Do you
we do. We do. And we see, sometimes that, a lot of times their like assistant or stylist will buy it for them.
Right.
But we also see the ladies who are shipping to New York, Hamptons, Palm Beach, and they have like four or five addresses that they're like sending the same things
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
Which is really fun. For us, it's really fun. We love our customers and we love, making them happy in that way. And I think the other thing I wanted to bring up, Dan, for you, like we've been friends for a couple years now. And I think in business, it's about relationships, right? And it's not transactional. It's not like, oh, well, Dan does this for me and I do this for him. Like it's about just like I think working with amazing people, working with people who you enjoy, who you celebrate their success with them. And I think, in this day and age where things are so like, I'll give you
Transact.
this if you give me
Yeah.
that, I think it's really such a blessing to work with great people with good hearts and good intentions.
Honestly, that's why we created this podcast. We just wanted to have a community for other like-minded business owners or potential brand and business owners to come to and feel like, okay, I'm not crazy for having to have to deal with this. And I need a little bit of advice, and I need specific advice. And what I said to Sam is, I'll do this, but I don't want to do it where I'm sitting there yelling at everybody like Gary Vee about how to be successful. Like that's not our way we do it. It's more we give very specific uh, advice on what to do in very specific situations. So we had a podcast that was just about retention. Um, we're doing a podcast that's just about quality control. And if you start to save all this in your library, you can really get the ingredients of building a successful brand. It's not just, work hard, but work smarter. Like that's not what this podcast is about. There's so
Yeah.
many people out there that say that you don't even really know if they're successful, if they've done it. Everyone that we're having on this podcast, we look at their numbers, we look at their data, we know that they're the real deal. And a lot of them are not as well known as some of the other people that you might see on podcasts, but they have so much more to offer because they're not just regurgitating the same talking points. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's what I think I think that's what makes this podcast unique. My one more question, Sam. Sorry, I know you like to ask the
No.
questions, but I just I'm so excited that Denise is here. So, you said something just now that resonates with me. You said, feeling like you're just doing things to help other people, right? And it's not about a transaction. It's not about a give and a take. I don't know how you feel because you have a very different business model than me with your, almost a dozen employees that are full time, and I have none. But and this sort of goes back to the post that you posted last month, that hit me like a ton of bricks, and we'll put that up on the screen. But it's lonely. Like I feel very lonely being an entrepreneur, which is so strange because most people, when they see me, they're like, "Oh my God, I get your ads all the time," or you're all over the internet, or I saw this celebrity, I saw Tom Brady using your device, and I'm like, I don't, no one, Tom doesn't call me, like he doesn't
Yeah.
check in on me. Like none of these people know me. They're using the device, but I don't have anyone. I work from home. I don't have anyone to converse with and throw ideas off of, and even just like go to lunch with. My wife is a special needs teacher, so she's with kids all day, and I don't get to see her till she comes home, and I'm like our German Shepherd sitting at the door, like panting, like waiting for her to come home because I have so much to tell her. But do you ever feel lonely being in this position as the CEO, even though you have employees? Isn't there still a loneliness that you're the only one at right there at the top?
Yeah. And you feel very lonely when, you have things that you can't really share with them, right? Like every business has money things going on, maybe your sales are not where they need to be. Um, and yeah, when you can't, it's not your employee's responsibility to take that load from you, And so, um, you need to, I think, as a leader and a CEO, like kind of protect them a little bit from like the big worries that are on your shoulders. But what I've found that I'm also very grateful for is I have some entrepreneur friends and founder friends who are in the same boat as me, who I can like call and be like, dude, like we've just had the worst day, like this happened and that happened. And so I've built a network of founders and friends who understand, and it's a very specific pain, I think, that we go through as founders. It might be you can't make payroll, or one of your big clients decides not to like pick you up for next season, or like big things. And I do think it's so important to have even one person that you can call and be like, I just need to vent for 10 minutes about my crappy day, and I think it helps a lot because it's a lot to put on your shoulders all the time and not be able to like tell somebody who understands what you're going through. And sure, your wife understands, like my boyfriend understands, but they're not in that position. They've never felt like that pain, of what you're
Yeah.
going through. And so I
They
do
can hear
think it's
you
really
out,
important, yeah,
but they can't
to
empathize with you.
exactly. They do in a way, obviously, but they don't quite understand it, I think. So yeah, for me, it's really important to have those friends. And I've had many over the course of the 10 years that we just unload. And I think that's why it helps to have a mentor too, right? Your mentor is somebody who's been where you are and has gone past that, surpassed that. And just to be able to be like, what did you do when this happen to you is such a helpful thing to have.
Yeah.
100%. There's a
Agreed.
saying that says it's lonely at the top. So
Yeah.
when you start to climb, in your own right, whatever business, you do, I think it's just eventual that there's less and less people that you can relate to and that can relate to you. And you do have your circle of founders, but then also once you start to realize that people get busy as well in their own worlds, right?
Mhm.
They're all launched into their own problems, their own ecosystem and world. So I think at some point you just become somebody who just learns to operate within their own realm, and then you lean on others as and when you can, and then
Yeah.
you start to become very self-sufficient in a way too, right?
Yeah. And I think that's a really good point, Sam, because I think big part of the entrepreneur journey is your own self-development, you learning about yourself. How do I manage my own stress? How do I manage feeling like a failure? How do I manage, you know, things not turning out the way I want them to? Those are all things that I think I've gone through and learned about myself through working with coaches, through talking with friends, working with mentors, like really learning about me as a person. I think that's such a beautiful but also scary part of this journey for people.
What
100%.
coaches are you working? Can you share like what coaches you're working with? I
Yeah,
wanna know about
so I'm not working with a coach currently, but in 2018, I was kind of at a turning point in Alala where I was feeling like the most burnt out that I've felt to date. And I worked with, she was like a half business, half spiritual coach. So she helped me like kind of do business planning and focus on business, but also like taught me how to meditate. She taught me how to use journaling and certain things to really manage my own stress. And that really changed like my entire mindset around like how to approach business and who I am and what it means about me when my business is doing well or badly. So that was amazing. Her name was Diane. I don't think she coaches anymore, but she really like changed my life. And through the course of the next couple years, I've worked with different coaches and different small groups who focus a lot on tactics, but also I think the personal development and spiritual side of things. And for me, that's really helped me, especially with like removing yourself a little from the business. Alala is not me. I'm not Alala. If Alala has a bad day, it doesn't mean I have to have a bad day. And it's very difficult
No, I don't know.
to feel
I
that
don't. I want to know,
separation.
understand that a little bit more because that was what I was going to ask you. Is when I have a bad day, if the best way to describe it is that like pit you get in your stomach when you either are about to cry or you did cry, but you're not crying. You just have that pit all day, and then when like sales pick up at 10 p.m. and then you end up doing better than even the day before, all of a sudden that pick goes away. But what if it didn't pick up at 10 p.m.?
Mhm.
And what if it was crap? And then the next day was even worse. What, like, I cannot find a way. I don't, this is something that I need help with. I cannot find a way to separate myself from the success and failures of literally the day to day and even hour to hour of my business. I mean, I've at least stopped, sending all cap Slack messages to my marketing team at 9 a.m. if I don't have the sales that I'm used to, and sometimes we'll be like, Facebook is meta's down. It'll pick back up at 12. We'll make it up. I've stopped doing that because now there's a trust, right? There's a trust with Sam's company. They handle retention for me, and I'm not micromanaging them anymore because I feel that trust and I feel like they've got my back and they're treating the company like it's mine. But that still doesn't solve my problems of when I feel horrible because I'm having a horrible day at work. And that's ridiculous. And it's so unfair to my wife and my children and the few friends that I have. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally. And like sometimes it's a bad day, sometimes it's bad months. It could be a whole bad year. And I think for me, I always come back to the gratitude, right? Like I think that's the balance. Like,
That's my
okay, yeah, we didn't get, X number of sales today, but I did have these people who bought things from me today, and I'm so grateful for them. So grateful for my team. But the simple things too. You're grateful for your family. You're grateful for your health. You're grateful to have internet and you can work from home. Whatever it is, I think the
Right.
gratitude part always is what I go to when I'm feeling that pit in my stomach.
So how do you
And
practice gratitude? Can you give us some
yeah,
specific?
for me, I journal. Like I'll just do like a gratitude dump, which is one of the things Diane, my coach, taught me. Just write everything until there's no more that you can be grateful for. Sometimes it's a page, sometimes it's 5 pages of like, I'm grateful that I can see. I'm grateful that I can hear. I'm grateful I have 10 fingers, 10 toes. Like I think we get so caught up in like, oh my God, this number. And I think for ecom owners, all business people, like it's so tangible, right? Did you make $100 today? Did you make $100,000 today? Like you can see it. And then also you compare yourself against everybody else who are like, you're reading articles about everybody's success stories all the time, and you're like, well, that person got to $100 million in 2 years, and here I am 10 years on not getting there. And so I feel like we have to like build a little protective shell around us sometimes. And for me, gratitude helps me kind of center myself again into like, okay, this is my journey. It doesn't look like theirs. I also don't know what crap they had to go through to get to where they are today, right? Nobody tells you that stuff. Um, so for me, yeah, gratitude journaling helps me a lot. Dan, maybe you should try it sometime.
Seriously,
Um,
I just love it. I just
there
love
you go. There you
at,
go.
at Office
Denise,
Depot with
I love how you said
yeah.
gratitude. I think it's so true. And Dan, just to add to that, I think three things, right? Firstly, I think it's a conscious choice. So it's a conscious decision. When let's say you have a day, 10 p.m., things aren't going according to plan. I think there's like the introspect where you just pause and hold on. Just because, my brand is not having a good day, I can prove to myself that I can have a good day. And I think it's also just that switch in your mind and just like a decision, right? Number two, there was an incredible quote I came across, and I think I have it pinned somewhere on my Twitter. And you can interchange man with woman or whatever, but it says, the average man has a billion wishes and dreams, but the sick billionaire has one. And to me, what I concluded from that is I think everybody's a billionaire because anyone who has health already has $1 billion asset that they take for granted every single day. And just the fact that you can go out and do the things that you can do, I don't think people understand. Like, who was it? It was Ambani, who was, I think, the richest man in India. And he was on I believe on his deathbed, he said, I would give it all away just to get my health back. And it just puts everything really into perspective, right? We're always chasing this number, this figure to give ourselves a self-worth because I believe entrepreneurs are born out of pain of some kind. You need the right formula, a mix of pain, doubt, something, when you were growing up. And, I think the ultimate journey is just to give yourself that validation that there is no number in the world that you'll hit that will satisfy you because you will always chase the next one that's beyond it, right? So it's gratitude puts you in the here and now. And it says, hey, I might not have $100 million in the bank, but I have everything I need right now to go and have a great day, take a walk, and like hear the birds, whatever. Like just the little things, right? In life. And I think the last thing I'd add to that is what I've learned from gratitude. The best time is right when you wake up in the morning because your mind is still in what's called theta waves. Most people in the morning, they wake up and they just turn over and they look at their phone. And you're getting hit by social media, Slack messages, WhatsApp, like, I don't know, however million apps we have. You're getting bombarded by all of this. And then you don't get,
Yeah, you wake up to Gary Vee yelling, "Why are you not a millionaire
it,
yet?"
exactly, right? You wake up in a reactive state. You're reacting to all the things. So then your day becomes reactive. So you react to all the Shopify notifications, right? But then if you use that time to just say, all right, 10 things I'm grateful for right when I wake up, it sets the tone for your day. So that's my 2 cents on gratitude.
I love that. I love that. I try not to look at my phone first thing in the morning, but if I do look at it, it's more because I'm just excited for the day, and I know this is probably a little strange, but I'm still in the first few years of my business, but I hate the weekends. I hate holidays. I love building this business, and there's no balance right now in my life, other than it's just family and work for me. But I'm excited every day to build this so that sometime soon, hopefully not too far away, I can do the things that I want to do and have more time for myself. Because this is just one of those opportunities. Sometimes, like they say, strike when the iron is hot. That's just a quote that's never going to go out of style. When you have something that's working, you cannot put it aside and say, I'll build that later. Like when you have an amazing opportunity like Castleflex, like Alala, like Revenue Labs, what each of us are doing, we're in that moment. Denise has been in that moment a lot longer than us, but you just can't let it go, unfortunately. And then on top of that, you have so many people that rely on the success of that business, right? For Denise, it's her employees. For me, it's my family. So you're just always feeling like there's another quote, which is you're as a parent, you're only as happy as your least happy child. Okay. So you have three kids and one of them is having a really, really hard time and the friends are being mean or they're not doing well in school. You're going to feel that. And so it almost doesn't matter like how good everything else is going. You're going to just feel so sad for that child that you feel responsible for. And I find in business, if I'm not successful, if I drop the ball, then I'm dropping the ball for everybody that's relying on my business. And while I don't have full-time employees, I have a lot of people that I'm their number one account. And if I go
Yeah.
away, they are in trouble. So there's a responsibility to those other people, and you cannot be selfish. But I agree, there needs to be a balance. That's something that I'm constantly trying to work on, but it's where I'm failing right now, and I'm willing to fail right now in that area because of how hot this iron is.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, I
really
don't
Just
interesting.
think you can always have full balance. Something always takes priority over other things.
Speaking of Denise, I have a question for you, right? So when you joined in, well, when you started Alala, right? You started Alana in a very competitive market. You already had all these titans up there that, your clothing brands, right? So how did you like develop, and Dan and I always talk about the importance of brand, right? Castleflex, like the whole idea, what Dan has done is made it into a brand. How did you develop the brand of Alala going into such a saturated market where you had such established players? How did you establish like a brand voice or unique brand identity in this already, dominated space?
That's a great question. And I feel like, yes, it's true. Activewear is very saturated, but so is a lot of things. A lot of industries are very saturated right now, right? Like the product brands are a dime a dozen. And so I think for us, it was really getting very, very clear on who your customer is and building out your customer profile, not just like, oh, yeah, she's this age and she lives here and, this is how much money she makes. Like, no, it was like, okay, what does she like to eat? Where is she going? Like, which hotels is she staying at? Like, what does her life look like? Like, all these things. And like communicating that to like the entire team and to all our partners as well. And I think like we filter everything through the lens of that customer. Like, what is she going to see on our website that she's going to be like, oh yeah, that's me, I want to wear that? What are the partners that we are going to work with that are going to resonate with her? And so, I think all our decision, like which wholesale partners should we work with that she's shopping at, or where we can find this woman. And I think having a very strong sense of your target customer and her entire life helps you make a lot of decisions, right? Like, for example, there's hundreds and thousands of influencers out there, millions of influencers, and we get inbound requests all day, every day. Hey, I want to work with you. I want to work with you. I want to work with you. But like having the filter of like, okay, this is who our customer is, it makes it so much easier to say like, okay, this influencer is going to be a good fit for our customer. This one is, not such a good fit. Even though she might have 2 million followers, it's not the right audience for us. And so I think for us, especially in the beginning, like having that very clear filter, even like a brand book where people are looking at that and saying, oh, okay, this is how I should be thinking about Alala, the brand, through this lens of the customer, was really helpful for us, in every aspect of our business, design, marketing, all of it.
And how did you find that, Denise? How did you find, because a lot of people say like find the customer. Is that just by talking to your customer, or is there a way
Yeah,
that you
the brand is not a thing that's like written down once and it's set in stone. A brand is a living, breathing thing. Just like we are living, breathing people, we change. Like Alala 10 years ago is not Alala today, And I think me as a leader and as the brand leader of Alala, like Alala changes as I change a little bit, but I'm kind of like looking at our customer and after a couple of years of sales, you have a really good sense of who that person is, right? You might not at first, but the more we send out surveys, we talk to our, best customers, we talk to customers that don't shop us anymore. Like we try and get a sense of like who this person is and then tailor our messaging and our communications and our brand to serve her.
When I started Castleflex, and I would say this in more cases than any other brand I've started, I had an idea of who my customer was going to be, right? So I created Castleflex because I had an issue, just like you had an issue with the fitness apparel world that you were in, and you didn't like what you saw out there, and so you created a solution. I created a solution for my chronic pain. I assumed because it looked so beautiful and it was expensive, and I assumed I was going to get sort of the luxury yoga crowd. Let's just like call it like the aloe yoga customer. That's who I thought I was going to get. I haven't gotten that customer at all. It never came. What ended up happening was I ended up getting people that were 60, 70, 80 years old that were dealing with chronic pain and had never prioritized stretching or mobility. And then I also got pro athletes that are in their teens, right? 18, 19, 20 to 33. And I missed that whole section that I thought I was going to get. So when I started the company, I had all these visions of, oh, this is how we're going to market. So I do this fancy photo shoot with Patrick Anderson. For those that don't know who that is, he's like Annie Leibovitz level of photography. He's like Bruce Weber, Annie Leibovitz. He's very, very high up in the fashion world. And so I did a fashion shoot with him. I'd done shoots with him before, and I thought, this is like perfect, right? And like nothing came of it. It looked so contrived and so too stylish, and it wasn't at all attractive to potential customers. So we did this whole shoot, we spent all this money, and really the best content we ever did was just actual real customers videoing themselves saying like, let me show you how I fix my plantar fasciitis, or let me show you how I fix my shoulder impingement. And then I said, oh, it's such an expensive device. It has to be only for people that can really, really afford it. And I was wrong, because I started doing what I think every business owner does when they get those first few orders every day. Like 10 orders a day, 11 orders a day. And you're like, ooh, I gotta, I heard that alarm bell. Like, let's go see who ordered. And it was like trailer homes. It was literally like being sent to a trailer park. And I was like, oh, they're going to return it. Like they're going to get this and they're going to be like, this is way too expensive. And the returns never came. And then I would get an order from a $70-80 million mansion in the Hamptons. And then I would be getting the very Midwest in the farm area type of orders. And I just didn't see it coming. It was not at all what I saw for my brand. So I totally agree with you that the brand is a living thing, and you just don't really know what's going to happen until you launch it. You could have the idea in your head, but if you're not prepared to switch, like if I had stuck with that marketing plan, I'd be down a lot of money and I wouldn't have the sales that we have today.
Yeah.
So they almost drove me to where I needed to be. Whereas I thought
Mhm.
I was going to lead them. They 100% were like, no, 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 this is where you're going to go. Not to say that we're not going to get, right? We're only approaching year 3. It's not to say we're not going to get that customer.
Yeah.
And doing collabs with you is going to be very helpful for a brand like mine, for both of us, because I think we both can
Mhm.
offer each other a lot in offering each other customers that we didn't have before. But that was a wake up call for me. Like you don't have it all figured out, Dan. Like I don't care how many brands you've started. I don't care how good you think you are at this. Like you had no idea what was going to happen, and
Yeah.
that's you got to be able to move, right, and be like
Yeah.
water, as Bruce Lee
It's
says.
a
Like just
beautiful thing. It's a
yeah.
beautiful thing, I think, to have that two-way conversation, you know?
So, Denise, when it comes to challenges as you were growing Alala, right? What was like the major challenge that you were facing in the beginning of your journey, like the real turbulence that you were facing, and how did you manage to solve it?
I think there are two things. One is standing out from, the crowd, which we talked about a little bit, and really finding your space in this big market, right? And, if I tell you a couple brands, you can tell how they're different from each other. And so I think the big challenge was like, okay, where are we going to plant our flag in this big space? And can we hold on to that? And so we decided to go for this more sophisticated, classic, little bit older customer, and appeal to her versus kind of like, going in another direction. And so I think finding that takes a little bit of time. There were seasons where we were more trendy, there were seasons where we were more this or that. And so we eventually found our spot in the market, and we've stayed there. And so I think that was a big challenge. And it took a lot of, I think, experimenting and also, again, paying attention to who our customer was, to find that space. And then I think, the other challenge, we're self funded. Dan, I think you're self funded too. Like,
Oh my god.
money capital is always a challenge. If you want to grow your company, you need more inventory, you need more money for marketing, you need all those things. And we never raised capital from like venture or anything like that. And so I think
Congratulations,
finding,
by the way. Like
thanks.
major,
Yes.
major. Are you kidding me?
It's
Everyone
huge.
always brags about the money that they raise, and whenever I see them do that on LinkedIn, the only thing I can think of is you're bragging about giving up your equity. That's all
Yeah.
you're doing. I'm not saying that it's
Yeah.
always to raise money. It's not. There's a time for it, and some people are able to never have to do it. But what an accomplishment to still be self-funded after that many years. That's incredible.
Thank you. I mean, it's definitely been, a challenge. And it's, again, the balance of, I think, how much you want to grow, how quickly you want to grow, and then how much you want to give up. But, we took the path of being self funded for Alala. And, I'm very proud of myself because we found other sources of capital, whether that's through a factor or through bank loans and things like that, that we could still fund growth without having to give up equity. So I think, again, people think fashion business, you're like, designing and doing photo shoots all day long, which you are, but you also need to understand and have the financial foundation to talk about all those things: money, capital, growth. And so I think that was definitely something that, was not easy to figure out, being a first time business owner.
Incredible. And for the people watching here, Denise, what is that? What is that you won't find this in a book moment for you that you'd like to share to any starting founder or founder in their journey, wherever they are in the journey? It could be in the start, it could be somewhere in the middle, fighting the waves, or it could be someone who's looking to scale up to where you've been at Alala. What would that thing be that you'd tell them that you wouldn't find in a book?
You know what? I would say don't even read the books. Don't even listen to anybody. Like there is value in books. There is value in listening to other people's advice. Yes, of course. But at the end of the day, like what I learned is that whatever instinct that I have developed as a founder, as the person who knows my brand the best of anybody and knows where I want to take the brand, like my inner voice and having a relationship with that inner voice, to me, has served me better than any piece of advice that I've gotten from a book or from anybody else. And so I find in the situations where I'm like, oh, in my mind, I'm like, I want to do it this way. And then, oh, but this really important, smart, successful person said to do it that way, and I'm going to do it the way that they said. A lot of times it doesn't work out very well for me. So I think there is, again, that element of personal development and learning to listen to yourself and trust yourself. That is a big win for anybody that's kind of starting their own business.
That is a golden nugget. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, because we're being shouted at every day on social media, right? Like, do this, do that. This is how I made my money. This is how you can make your money. But they don't know what you're going through. They don't know the situation that you're in. They don't know what your payroll is. There's no way that you can just give somebody, here's the key, here are the keys, go drive. Like, no way. It doesn't work that way. So
Yeah.
that's amazing advice. I really hope people are they stuck around to the end of the podcast to hear that.
Yeah, 100%. There's so many voices online. Don't let it drown out your own voice and develop a real, gut instinct and intuition. Denise, thank you so much for your time. Dan,
Thank
as
you.
always, a pleasure to have you on. And amazing, Denise. Can't wait to get this live and share some of these incredible nuggets of your journey as a founder. So thanks again. Much
Yeah,
appreciated.
thanks for having me.
Thanks, Denise. Thanks, Sam.